What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 117 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. I'd like to give a big shout out to our new listeners from the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria. That brings our total to 58 countries. If you want to help us reach more people in more countries, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends, or click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled Overcoming Resentments. Welcome back to episode 117 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast entitled Overcoming Resentments. I want to give a big welcome to my friends in recovery from the U.S., South Africa, and Australia for their participation in this group. As before, I'll be keeping them anonymous, but I'll be saying their answers as if we're having a live group meeting. Hey guys, here's the topic for today. It's about forgiveness. And in discussing the topic of forgiveness, we're going to do it in regard to overcoming resentments. For example, if you've been holding on to any grudges, you may discuss how holding on to that resentment has affected your life. Ben, would you like to get us started today?
Sure, David.
If I've learned anything in my recovery walk, it's that I do not have the time or energy to hold on to any unforgiveness or resentment. They are just too heavy to carry. I kind of look at this as more of a mountain climb. So why am I going to put on a backpack with a bunch of stones in it when I could climb without a backpack full of stones? I mean it. I get it. People hurt you and we hurt people. And resentments and unforgiveness exist. However, I found it highly beneficial to be intentional about keeping short accounts and letting go of all that junk, because it ends up getting into my conversation and I end up poisoning somebody else with how I feel about another person. I don't want to screw up my walk or their walk. The best personal example that comes to mind is my relationship with my dad. We both had unforgiveness and resentment toward each other for years, but we made a conscious decision to let it go and let love win. Now, two people who really honestly couldn't stand each other in the same room, we worked together in prisons, homeless shelters, and recovery units to help carry other people to a place of healing. We were enemies, and now we are teammates. I think that's why resentment and unforgiveness are so powerful. If you can flip the coin and do the opposite, it's literally one of the most powerful tools for the positive way to walk in forgiveness. Great start, Ben. I really like how you chose to let love win. And yes, it is a conscious decision that I want to encourage all of our readers to take your example there and make that decision to just let go and not carry that heavy backpack. Charlie, what do you think about this topic? Oh my, David. Resentments and grudges have always been something that has plagued me. Before I found recovery, I actually thought it was one of my best qualities. I was proud of it, as I would not be made a fool of a second time. And I'd be waiting to put it on you twofold. In recovery, I found out that this way of thinking and acting is not how God intended us to be. So now I can pray and love my enemies. But it's still there. When I go to my former employer, I still get upset over how I was treated. I say things that hurt my soul, and I get angry. I can't let go of it yet. Therefore, it ruins conversations with my friends and family, and they weren't even involved. I'm unable to feel okay when I'm in the parking lot of that place. I have to go to a meeting or call my sponsor when I start thinking of certain people. I've been praying for them more, and that seems to be helping me. The most important thing is that I now know how to let go, and I can admit I'm a work in progress. I think it's important to say that I've forgiven myself as well. The one thing that I hang on to is the way I've treated my wife over the years, and communicating with her is a challenge because of this. I continue to work on it, and I know God has broken the chains. I just have to give it away to Him daily. Wow, good input there, Charlie. I like the way you were able to see through how your resentments from an old workplace have just affected the way you deal with friends and your wife and family. Dante, what do you think about this topic? David, maybe I'm the only crazy one out of this group, but I actually find myself mentally and emotionally revisiting instances with people, and even to the point of imagining instances in what things might occur if I saw them again, based on the resentment that I held toward them for a short period of time. I told myself that if I forgive this particular individual, and I've given it to the Lord, and I'm letting go, well, holding on to that really has caused me a lot of mental and emotional frustration at a lot of times. I don't know how much it's hampered my ability to function, nor my productivity at any given time in my day. But I do know I had emotional and a mental time wasted. And in that, I took energy away from me that could have been put towards something more productive. I have found in something like this that I've struggled continually giving it back to God and continually taking my issues back to Him. I had thought maybe finding peace with the individual would be a reasonable thing to do. But I don't believe that going back to them at this point, considering I never see or talk to them normally, would be a wise decision on my part. I have found the more I choose to focus on what God has put in front of me and where my feet are and what the vision is for my life ahead, that I am much happier, much more fulfilled, and I don't need the certainty of the place of anger that resentment towards that person has created. Wow, great stuff, Dante. I like how your faith has really been an anchor for you to be able to let go and let God, I guess we'd call it, huh? Eddie, how about you on this topic? Well, David, I'm fortunately the type of person that gets off the bus. I forgive quickly and move on. So resentment is not something I know much about. However, there is unfortunately a situation in my life that really crushed me. My uncle had a massive falling out after my wedding, and it lasted for a year. He was my mentor, my brother, my father, a go-to guy. He, however, passed away in a tragic car accident before we ever got to apologize to each other. And that has stayed with me forever. We couldn't make peace, and now I've got this in me feeling like it's forever. You see, that happened in 2009. Here it is 13 years later, and I'm still carrying that with me. Eventually, I realized that in order for me to move on, I had to release him and forgive myself because, he meant so much to me when he was alive. Unforgiveness and resentment can erode into your emotions and block your blessings and your recovery. I still break down when I think of what brought on the fight. It was totally unnecessary, but which has lasted almost forever because this time my uncle Timothy didn't allow me to get off the bus. I'm still learning to forgive myself. Wow. Eddie, thanks for sharing such a personal example there, and I know many of our listeners can identify what do we do with those emotions that we still have that we wish we had taken care of before someone passed. Gary, what do you think about this topic? Well, David, for me, resentment through unforgiveness played a dominant role through the first 30 years of my life, significantly shaping virtually every aspect of my attitude, which determined to a large extent the path I set for myself. From a fearful child, through rebellion in my teens, and into an angry and resentful young man, my life was like a runaway train heading for certain derailment and destruction. Now, in hindsight, it was a conscious attempt to self-destruct, which ended with a long-term incarceration before my 21st birthday in an ultra-maximum institution, which was actually fortunate for me. As crazy as that sounds, because the wildness that characterized my actions was leading inextricably towards an early grave. Going to prison virtually saved my life. I was made to feel worthless growing up in my father's house, and he brought the truth of that in beatings on a regular basis, regardless of whether I misbehaved or achieved. After vain attempts to impress him, I realized that the abuse was not because of what I did or did not do, but was more to do with the fact that I was just there. For a long time, I found it impossible to forgive him, especially because I believed the fault or problem lay with me. Anger and aggression characterized my behavior and my attitude, and I was in my late 40s before I found it in myself to forgive my father and turn to him and apologize. But fortunately, in the last 5 years of his life, I finally got a father who I knew loved and accepted me. And I also found a best friend in him, a kindred spirit, if you will. And honestly, those few years more than made up for everything and released me from the resentment, making true and real forgiveness possible. Wow. Thanks so much, Gary. As I look at that, I see you're really reached that point of understanding we can say we forgive and not always mean it because we're still holding on to some bitterness and resentment. And I'm so happy that you got to release all of that and enjoy that time with your father. Harry, you want to close us off today? Sure, David. For me, unforgiveness and holding grudges was one of my big triggers in the past. I remember when I used to drink alcohol and take drugs, my mind used to play tricks on me and make me think of the issues I had with people from my past, and it used to work me up, and I used to plot my revenge to get back at those who hurt me. The alcohol and drugs fueled my hatred toward those individuals, and it kept me in bondage for many years in my addiction. When I was around any of those people, I always gave them the cold shoulder treatment and even verbally abused them. And then afterwards, I would laugh about it to make it seem like I was joking. But if I must admit, I gossiped about them and I tried to tarnish their reputation just because I had so much resentment and anger with them. This went on for many years until I met with my two late pastors who taught me about forgiveness and letting things go, doing a sort of handover to the Lord and let Him fight my battles. I came to realize most of the battles were actually my fault because I chose not to listen to those who tried to help me at the time and rebelled against them for getting involved in my life. And they were actually trying to help me stop my addictions. The moment I came to terms with letting go and forgiving those so-called people who hurt me, my life got better. The resentment went away. and I could smile again and go back to those people and ask for forgiveness for my behavior. Some did forgive me and some didn't. But I live better now, and I have a relaxed life, knowing that I don't have any resentment or grudges, and I learned to forgive much quicker than before. Wow, great way to close us off there, Harry. I think it's so important to realize that as we let go of our resentments, we begin to lead a more relaxed life. We found our peace again, and we realize that these people weren't actually out to hurt us. They may have been trying to help us, and it was our behavior at the time and our attitude at the time that got in the way. Thanks, guys. Great group meeting today. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you would like to join an online group or get one-on-one counseling to help you in your journey of overcoming resentment, please message me on the link in this podcast or by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com, or you can go to my website www.fromatod.org and click on the contact page. You can also keep in touch with what we're doing in From A to D by following me on Instagram at David From A to D. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.